The morning that changed my life started with a mop in one hand and my daughter's lunchbox in the other. By noon, I was sitting across from international investors in a glass conference room on the 42nd floor, translating for the CEO of a billion-dollar company. By sunset, I had helped close a $50 million deal that nobody thought was possible. And by the next morning, half the office was asking how a janitor like me had ended up in a boardroom they weren't even allowed to enter. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. When I stepped into that room, I knew if I failed, I'd probably lose the only job keeping food on my daughter's table. If I succeeded, I'd expose a secret I had spent years trying to bury. So tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing? Would you risk everything for one chance to change your life? My name is Daniel Carter, and for 3 years I was the night janitor at one of the biggest corporate towers in Chicago. I cleaned floors people in $1,000 suits walked across without ever noticing me. I emptied trash cans filled with contracts worth more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. I wiped fingerprints off conference room glass while executives inside discussed mergers, acquisitions, and numbers so big they didn't even sound real. Most people looked at me and saw exactly what the uniform suggested: a quiet guy pushing a cleaning cart, trying not to get in anyone's way. And honestly, I let them believe that. It was easier. What they didn't know was that before life knocked me flat, I had been headed somewhere very different. I grew up in a small apartment above my parents' grocery store. My father immigrated from Colombia with nothing but a suitcase and an obsession with hard work. My mother was from Spain, and between the two of them, our home sounded like an international radio station. Spanish at breakfast, English at school, sometimes French from my mother's old university books. Languages came naturally to me, like music. By college, I was fluent in Spanish, French, and conversational Mandarin. I studied international business because I wanted to work in global finance. I had the grades, the internships, the whole polished future everyone dreams about. Then life happened. I met Sarah during my junior year. She had this laugh that made every bad day feel temporary. We got married young, probably too young, but when you're in love, warnings sound like background noise. 2 years later, our daughter Lily was born, and I thought I had won the lottery of life. Then Sarah got sick. Cancer doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door in and rearranges everything. Within a year, our savings were gone. I dropped out of grad school interviews. I turned down overseas offers. I took whatever work I could find close to home because hospitals became our second address. She fought hard. God, she fought hard. But some battles aren't fair. When Lily was 3, I buried my wife. I still remember standing there in a borrowed black suit, holding my little girl while she asked when mommy was coming home. There are moments in life where something inside you breaks so completely that even breathing feels like work. That was mine. After that, ambition became survival. Fancy resumes and language certificates didn't matter when daycare bills were due and rent was late. I worked warehouses, delivery routes, overnight stocking shifts. Eventually, I got the janitor position at Ashford Global Holdings because it offered health insurance and stable hours. Stable becomes beautiful when chaos is your normal. Every morning, I'd wake Lily up at 6, make her pancakes shaped like terrible animals, braid her hair badly enough for her to complain every single time, and drop her off at school before heading to work. She was 8 then, all missing front teeth and fierce opinions. She thought my job was heroic because, Dad, you make dirty places clean, and that helps everybody. Kids have a way of making ordinary things sacred. Ashford Global was run by CEO Evelyn Grant, a woman people described with words like intimidating, brilliant, and impossible to impress. She had built the company from a regional logistics firm into an international empire. Employees whispered about her like she was a storm system, admired from a distance, feared up close. I had only spoken to her twice in 3 years. The first time, she said, "Excuse me," when I was blocking an elevator. The second time, she thanked me for finding her assistant's missing laptop. That was it. Still, from my quiet corners with a mop and bucket, I observed everything. People underestimate janitors. They talk around you like you're invisible. You learn who's honest, who's cruel, Who's pretending confidence while panicking inside? One person I noticed a lot was Victor Hale, the senior vice president of operations. Expensive watches, perfect hair, and the kind of smile that looked rehearsed. He treated everyone below him like furniture. He once snapped his fingers at me to clean coffee he spilled himself. I wanted to pour the rest on his shoes. Victor had been positioning himself as the likely successor if Evelyn ever stepped down. He loved reminding people of that. Then came the Monday that rewrote my life. I was cleaning the executive conference floor early because there was a major international meeting scheduled. Rumor was Ashford was trying to secure a partnership with a South American infrastructure group that would expand operations across 3 countries. $50 million on the table. Maybe more. The visiting delegation was led by Alejandro Ruiz, a businessman from Bogotá known for being brilliant, stubborn, and deeply distrustful of American corporations trying to outsmart him. Evelyn had arranged for a professional interpreter, because although she spoke basic Spanish, this kind of negotiation required precision. At 8:10 a.m., I was polishing the conference room windows when I heard chaos. Lauren, Evelyn's chief assistant, came rushing down the hall looking like she'd seen a ghost. "The interpreter's in the hospital," she said to someone on the phone. "Appendicitis. Emergency surgery." "No, I'm serious. He's not coming." She hung up and nearly ran into me. "Sorry, Daniel." I nodded and kept working, but I could hear everything. "There has to be someone," she said. "There isn't," another voice replied. Victor's. Annoyed sharp. "We'll reschedule." "We can't reschedule," Lauren snapped. "Ruiz flew here with his entire legal team." Victor lowered his voice, but not enough. "Then Evelyn can handle it. Her Spanish is fine." "No," Lauren said. "Fine isn't enough for contract law." I should have kept mopping. I really should have. "Instead," I said quietly, "I speak Spanish." They both turned like I'd barked. Victor actually laughed. "Congratulations," I swallowed. "Fluently. My father's Colombian. I studied international business. I used to do translation work in college." Lauren blinked. Victor smirked. "And I used to play high school football. Doesn't mean I'm joining the NFL." I felt my face burn, but I stood there. "Ask me something," I said. Victor rolled his eyes. Lauren, desperate enough to try anything, switched to rapid Spanish. Not textbook Spanish, fast, natural, business-heavy. I answered just as quickly. Her expression changed. She asked harder questions. Legal terminology, financial phrases, regional slang. I answered all of them. Victor's smile disappeared. Before anyone could say more, the elevator opened and Evelyn Grant stepped out. The entire hallway straightened like gravity had changed. "What's the problem?" she asked. Lauren explained in 30 seconds. Victor jumped in. "It's under control. We'll delay the meeting." Evelyn looked at her watch. "No." Lauren hesitated, then pointed at me. "Daniel says he can interpret." There was a silence so sharp it could cut glass. Evelyn looked at me, not at the uniform, not at the mop, but directly at me. "Can you?" she asked. I said the most dangerous honest word in the English language. "Yes." Victor scoffed. "This is absurd." Evelyn ignored him. "If I put you in that room and you embarrass this company, I'll know in 5 minutes." I nodded. "Understood. And if you're telling the truth?" I took a breath. "Then I'll help you close the deal." For the first time, I saw the faintest hint of a smile. "Get cleaned up," she said. "Meeting starts in 20. I have never run so fast in dress shoes. Lauren found an extra suit jacket from Lost and found, slightly too big, but better than janitor blues. I washed my hands 3 times. My reflection looked like a man pretending to be someone else. Maybe I was. Before I walked in, I checked my phone. A text from Lily. "Good luck at work, Daddy. Don't forget parent art night Thursday." I stared at that message for 5 full seconds. Then I walked into the room. Alejandro Ruiz sat at the center of the table, silver-haired and unreadable, surrounded by advisors. He looked like the kind of man who could smell dishonesty before you opened your mouth. Evelyn introduced me simply. "This is Daniel Carter. He'll be assisting with interpretation today." I expected skepticism. Instead, Ruiz just studied me. Then he asked, in Spanish, "And should I be concerned that your assistant was carrying a mop 30 minutes ago?" The room froze. I answered in Spanish, "Only if cleanliness offends you, sir." There was a beat of silence, then he laughed. A real laugh. Good, he said. I prefer honest people. The meeting began. For 3 hours. I lived in 2 languages at once. Numbers, clauses, shipping terms, labor agreements, tax implications. I translated everything with the kind of focus that makes the world disappear. I watched Evelyn negotiate like a chess grandmaster, always 3 moves ahead. I watched Victor grow increasingly irritated every time I spoke. Halfway through, I noticed something. Victor had prepared part of the proposal package, specifically the logistics projections for the Bogotá expansion. And one figure kept coming up, a transportation cost estimate that sounded wrong. Very wrong. I knew Colombia. I knew the ports, the trucking routes, the regional regulations. The numbers were too low, unrealistically low. If Ruiz caught it, the entire deal could collapse. I leaned toward Evelyn during a break and quietly said, "There's a discrepancy in the logistics estimate." Victor heard me. "Excuse me?" I kept my voice calm. "The inland freight costs are understated by at least 30%. "That's ridiculous," Victor snapped. Ruiz looked interested. I continued in Spanish, carefully. "Certain regional fuel surcharges and infrastructure fees appear to be missing." Victor's face turned red. "You are a janitor, not an analyst." And there it was, the room went silent. I looked at him and said, "Today, apparently, I'm both." Ruiz smiled into his coffee. Evelyn asked one question. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes." She turned to Victor. "Can you prove he's wrong?" Victor started talking fast, defensive, messy. It was the first time I'd seen him without his polished armor. Ruiz's legal team checked the figures. 5 brutal minutes later, they confirmed it. I was right. And suddenly, the room changed, because if the mistake had made it into the final agreement, Ashford would have looked either incompetent or dishonest. Either one could kill trust. That was the moment everything balanced on a knife edge. So let me ask you. If you were me, standing there in borrowed clothes, with executives staring at you like you'd broken into the wrong universe, would you keep pushing? Or would you back down and remember your place? Because I had a choice. Stay quiet and protect the small life I'd built, or keep speaking and risk making powerful enemies. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to think about that and honestly tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? I chose not to step back. Instead, I asked permission to present a revised logistics structure. Victor looked like he wanted security to escort me out personally. But Evelyn said, "Go ahead." So I stood at the screen, hands shaking just enough for only me to notice, and explained an alternative strategy using regional warehousing partnerships I had researched years earlier during grad school. Smaller local contracts, better customs flexibility, lower long-term cost exposure. I even suggested a bilingual community liaison program to improve labor trust in rural areas. I wasn't guessing. I knew this. Ruiz interrupted twice, not to challenge me but to test me. Local policy questions, cultural concerns, labor history. I answered all of it. Finally, he leaned back and said, in Spanish, "You understand our people. Most executives only understand our money." That sentence changed everything. The negotiation shifted from hostile to collaborative. Evelyn adapted instantly, building on the trust that had just opened. By late afternoon, both legal teams were drafting final language, $50 million, closed. When the signatures were done, the room actually felt lighter. Ruiz stood, shook Evelyn's hand, then turned to me. "My father cleaned train stations," he said quietly. People spoke around him as if dignity belonged only to men in suits. They were wrong then, and they are wrong now. He handed me his card. "If you ever want real work, call me." I still have that card. After they left, the conference room emptied slowly. Victor stormed out without looking at me. I considered that a personal award. Lauren hugged me so hard I nearly dropped my notes. Then it was just me and Evelyn. She stood by the window overlooking the city. "You hid an unusual resume behind a mop," she said. "I wasn't hiding," I replied. "I was surviving." She nodded like she understood that better than most. "Why didn't you apply for corporate roles?" I laughed once. Because after enough rejection letters, people start believing the version of themselves the world finds most convenient. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That was their mistake, not yours." The next morning, I was called to the executive floor again. I assumed maybe paperwork, maybe a thank you, maybe unemployment if Victor had enough influence. Instead, Evelyn slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an offer. Operations analyst, full salary, benefits, education reimbursement, flexible schedule for Lily. I stared at it like it was written in another language. I haven't worked in corporate in years, I said. You worked in corporate yesterday, she replied. Better than some people who've been here a decade. I actually got emotional. Right there, in front of one of the most feared CEOs in Chicago. The first thing I asked was, "Can I still make it to my daughter's school events?" She smiled. "That's the first question you asked." "Good. Yes." I signed before my fear could talk me out of it. Telling Lily was the best part. She was coloring at the kitchen table when I came home. "Hey, Bug," I said, "how would you feel if Daddy stopped cleaning offices and started helping run them?" She looked up seriously and asked, "Do you still get to wear comfy shoes?" I laughed so hard I cried. She decided the promotion was acceptable as long as pancakes remained legally required. Fair terms, the transition wasn't easy. Some people welcomed me. Some absolutely did not. Office politics doesn't disappear just because you earn a chair at the table. Victor especially made sure I felt the weight of crossing invisible lines. But results are hard to argue with. Within a year, I led international operations strategy for 2 major regions. I finished the graduate certification I'd abandoned after Sarah got sick. I bought Lily and me a small house with a backyard big enough for her to insist we needed a dog. We got the dog. His name is Pancake. He is useless and beloved. Sometimes I still think about Sarah and how badly I wish she could see us now. I think she'd laugh at how terrible I still am at braiding hair. I think she'd be proud that I kept going even when I wanted to stop. Most of all, I think she'd remind me of something she used to say when life got hard. People will try to hand you a smaller version of yourself. Don't accept it. For years, I did accept it. Not because I lacked ability, but because grief convinced me survival was the same as surrender. It isn't. Sometimes the world meets you at your lowest point and decides that's your permanent address. Sometimes people see your uniform before they see your mind. Sometimes they mistake silence for lack of value. Let them, because when your moment comes, and it will come, you won't need their permission. You'll only need the courage to say yes when the door opens. So no, I don't think I was wrong for stepping into that boardroom. I think I was overdue. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever had to fight twice as hard just to be seen, then maybe this story was meant for you. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, life writes stranger scripts than I ever could. And I want to hear your final thoughts on this whole mess. Would you have taken that risk, or would you have stayed quiet? Drop your answer in the comments section. I read more of them than you'd think. I'll see you all in the next story.